This episode is part of a series where I take already published memoir and break down what works and why, and what doesn't work and why. I found that when I'm teaching my memoir method concepts to writers, they benefit from seeing these principles play out in memoir that you can find at the bookstore. In September, I dived deep into Ordinary Time by Annie B. Jones, and today we actually get to talk to her. I'm so excited. So let's welcome her to the show. You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started.
Hi, Charlotte. Thank you for having me.
I am just so excited that you're able to come on. I've known about you and followed you for a long time because of your podcast, From the Front Porch.
Thank you. Yeah, it's weird to describe myself as a podcaster. I think of myself as bookstore owner, but a lot of people do know us because of From the Front Porch.
Yeah, and because of your podcast, I have purchased from the bookshelf. I've had seasons where I've done your shelf subscription, which is so much fun. So yeah, I think it's really remarkable how you've taken a podcast and being a bookstore owner of an independent bookstore, but kind of made it nationally. Like, people know you. It's amazing.
It is amazing. I was just talking because we're in the process of doing some hiring at the bookshelf. And so we were talking to potential candidates this week. And it is so wild to me that the store has grown in such a way where we've had to grow our team. Our footprint, I hope, exists and I believe does exist beyond Thomasville, Georgia. And so it is very gratifying that a lot of folks come to Thomasville because of the bookshelf, because of the podcast. And that just is that makes things even better for our town, for our community. So, but it never stops being surreal to me that people outside of our tiny little town have heard of us.
Yeah, and what you write about in your essays is a lot of small town, a lot of things about living in a small town. I don't live in a small town. I live in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. So I'm like literal opposite sides of the country.
Yes.
We're opposite, pretty much. But I think that's a really, really remarkable thing, and we could probably have a whole other podcast episode where we talk about the business side of what you do, and you've talked about that a lot in other places. But I was really excited to have you on to talk about the actual writing and editing and publishing of your collection. So as a reminder, you don't need the reminder for the listeners. You know when your book debuted. It was published in April of 2025, so almost 6 months ago, through Harper One.
Yeah.
And so launch season is really intense. And also you did it while super pregnant. So all the applause.
Thank you so much.
I also find that remarkable. I have birthed 3 humans myself, and being 8-9 months pregnant is my least favorite physical state of being.
Yeah, I can see why. I now understand why. It was probably good that I didn't know. Ignorance, I'm sure enabled me to do what I had to do. But yeah, by the time the book released, I think I was, 8 months pregnant and going on a little book tour around some bookstores in the South, which was really exciting. And, but certainly not how maybe I envisioned those dates going, or how I envisioned, I always envisioned a book tour. Glamorous might not be the right word. I'd never use that word to apply to myself, but maybe a slightly more glamorous than compression socks. But here we are.
You know what? You did it, and you did it with grace and in a really cute dress. So
thank you. The one dress that fit, it went with me everywhere.
You know what? And it matched your book cover. So
that's right. That's all I cared about.
All you need.
Dressing.
So you're almost 6 months out from launch. So how has life as a published author, how does that feel 6 months out from the actual publication?
So publishing as an author is so surreal, and it's so different from what it is like to be a bookseller and to help a book kind of launch into the world in that way. This was very different from that. And so I knew, and what I had heard from my author and writer friends was the week before the book is published, and then the 2 weeks after the book is published, that's when the publisher really cares the most about you. And then after that, things kind of get quiet. And I did find that to be the case, where the build up, the lead up to the book, still kind of promoting pre-orders. And so maybe the 2 weeks in front of the book's release and then the 2 weeks after, that was certainly when it felt at its most intense. But in the weeks following, I think I had been prepared for this, but I do think I was surprised at, oh, the book is done. The book is done. The book is done. It's out in the world. And now kind of readers do their thing. Readers and booksellers and librarians. Like, the book isn't really my responsibility anymore, I guess. Like, my responsibility mostly came in the writing of it and in the front end and maybe in some promotion. But after the book is published, it kind of is like the chips fall where they may. And so that probably was the most surprising thing to me, because as a bookseller, that's when my job begins. Yeah. And so as an author, to kind of let go of the reins was odd. And then I think what has been another pleasant surprise for me is, the book came out in April, late April. I gave birth in early June. And I think there are pros and cons to that. I would not necessarily recommend it to every author. For me, the pro was, I cared deeply who read this book and that it find its right people. Like, I really wanted this book to find its audience. I also knew that after a certain point, sales numbers were not they were nothing I could control. And so if I had not had a baby to focus on, I might have become obsessive about checking sales numbers, checking sales data, reading reviews. And instead, I made a kind of a decision early on to not read too many reviews, but I also kind of had to just decide, I've done my part. I'll appear on podcasts, I'll be on book clubs, but I couldn't do so many things. I was so pregnant, I couldn't do very many things. So it was a good reminder of maybe boundaries and maybe what is and is not in our control. But now that we're 6 months out and my literal baby is 3 months old, I am really honored to discover that the book is still making its way into the world, even if I went absent for a little bit. I went into hibernation mode as a new mom. I'm glad I did that. I do not have any regrets about that. But I'm really grateful to see, the bookshelf. I had a family member who was up in Maine. The bookshelf's still on display at a bookstore, like on a front table, which as a bookseller, that thrills me. To be invited on podcasts. I got to attend a book club out in Nebraska. Like, I did a virtual event with them. And so getting to do things like that, when for me, it feels like the book came out forever ago. And it feels like, surely people will have forgotten about this by now. It's been kind of nice to realize, no, it's still got legs. Like, it's still meandering and winding its way into people's hands through book festivals, through podcast episodes and interviews, through book club meetings. And that has been something I maybe wasn't expecting. I kind of almost thought, well, once I have the baby, nobody's going to care about this anymore. And I'm just relieved that no, people do care about it. And when I wrote it, I wanted it to have a timeless quality. And so I'm thrilled that might actually be the case.
I think that it 100% is timeless. And I work with independent memoir writers. They hire me out and I help them in the developmental editing stage, kind of the big picture where all your ideas are messy. Like, that's where I thrive. And the way that I like to talk about what you're talking about is it's a conversation that your memoir is here to have. And so your essay collection's continuing to have a conversation with all the people that it touches. And so that is really neat to just see that continue to play out. It's not, I know that a lot of people talk about publishing their book feels like having a baby, except that then once the book's out there, it's not like having a real baby where the work just begins and
exactly
always there.
Yes, like I think you're exactly right. I had heard it described, and all the jokes were made and should have been made. They were rightfully made, that like I was putting a baby and a book into the world, and the irony of that. But the book, I knew the book would become the readers. Like, it's kind of stops being mine and it gets itself into readers' hands and it becomes theirs. So I knew that, but I didn't think about that it would be able to have conversations without me there. Does that make sense? Like, I didn't realize there's so much emphasis and I would even say pressure, especially now when publishing. I think it's okay to say that publishing is moving in the direction of platforming, meaning people with a platform are perhaps more likely to get a book deal. And you and I could debate the pros and cons of that all day
Yeah.
long. But I do think that is part of the nature of the current iteration of publishing. And because of that, there is a lot of pressure to like market your book and to be the face of your book and be selling, selling, selling. And as a bookseller, some of that comes naturally to me. A lot of it does not. And so I worried a little bit about that. Like, will I be able to like keep the momentum going? And of course, then I had a baby and couldn't keep the momentum going. And it's a good reminder that words and books are powerful on their own. I have just been so delighted to see, oh, people are still reading it, still talking about it, still having a conversation with it and through it, whether I am on my Instagram stories every day talking about it or not.
Yes. And I have a lot of thoughts about author platforming also. Yeah, it could be like another
Yeah.
conversation because that's something that at least a lot of people who want to write a memoir maybe haven't thought of themselves as writers before and don't just have like, they're like, I don't want to be on social media. And I'm like,
Right.
I get it. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I understand that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that well done memoir does just it generates the conversation
Mm-hmm.
itself,
Hope so.
which is kind of a relief, I feel,
Yes.
for the author. To be like, oh, okay,
Yes.
like this is just perpetuating itself and it's still
Mm-hmm.
getting out there and you could just have a baby and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy your baby in the summer.
Yeah.
And which is the best time I've never had a summer baby. I had my baby, like I had to like be pregnant through the summer. Like
Oh.
I had August babies and an October baby.
Oh. Well, if you lived in August in the deep South, I literally was
I
so
could
relieved our
not.
baby was born in June because I was like, I don't think I can do this.
It's it's a
It's too
miracle
hot.
that I'm still married, that my marriage survived all of that.
Yes.
I was a monster.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you did answer this question a little bit already, but just the difference between being a bookseller, because you are
Mm-hmm.
deeply involved in the publishing industry, but in a very specific part of it.
Yeah, in a
Um,
totally different way. I mean, this was so, and I knew, so because I've been a bookseller for so long, I did feel privy to, like, through interacting with authors, through hosting author events, I did feel privy to some of the information. Like, it was not shocking to me. I had my friend and business coach, she kind of told me, hey, for a writer, most writers either like the writing or the marketing. A lot of writers don't like both. And I really thought, well, I'll be the exception. I'm going to love both because I already do marketing
Mhm.
in my day-to-day job. I mean, so much of owning and operating a bookstore, running a podcast is marketing. I mean, that's what it is. And so I thought, no, I'll really like it. And I did like it. I did like marketing the book, but it is different to market the book you have written rather than the books everyone else has written. Like it feels far more personal, far more self-aggrandizing maybe. Like I definitely had moments where I thought, "Oh my gosh, I'm talking about this too much." Like I know it's my job to talk about ordinary time, but also I'm tired of talking about ordinary time. And that wasn't true. I did not get tired of talking about it because the topic of staying is dear to me. And so I really could talk about that all day long. But I think it very quickly became apparent that the work that I do as a bookseller and the marketing that I do as a bookseller is different from marketing a book. I'll give one very literal example. So I own an independent bookstore and I hope that I champion independent bookstores all over the country. Well, Amazon is a huge part of the publishing industry. It is a giant in publishing, and publishers care deeply how well your book sells on Amazon. And I felt really weird about and kind of icky about promoting my book and telling people to go buy it on Amazon when for the last almost 20 years I've been telling people to shop small. Like it just felt so it felt inauthentic. It felt challenging. But again, my publisher really, and they cared because those numbers matter. Amazon is perhaps the number one purveyor of books. And so I ultimately had to just decide, okay, I'm going to keep promoting my bookstore like I always have. But my rule kind of was, if a stranger my parents encountered on the street or a random person I saw asked me what I did for a living and I told them I wrote a book, then I would just say, you can find it on Amazon, because chances are they would look there anyway. And that became kind of my mental rule. But my book did not do well on Amazon. It just didn't sell well there. And I'm not surprised by that. But I think my publisher was a little bit bummed by that.
Sure. I intentionally bought your book through my local indie.
Yeah.
I would have felt, I mean, again, like, and this may have just, I wonder if this is because of your built-in readership,
Yes.
who already know, like, and trust you, who were eager to read your work, who also are committed to shopping small in independent bookstores. Like, I buy books at local indies as often as possible. Like,
Right.
and so I feel like that I'm probably not alone in a reader who is eager to read what you write, because that's important. That's like a value, I think, for your readers.
Absolutely. And I hope, intentionally and unintentionally trained our podcast listeners, trained our audience to do that. And so it felt really weird to all of a sudden be like, find my book on Amazon. Like, here's the link. It's $1.99 on Kindle today. Like, I haven't done that. Like, I haven't shared that because I'm like, that feels weird. It just it doesn't match. And I would hate to lose the audience we at the bookshelf, I as a person, have worked so hard to build. Yeah, I would hate to lose those people by being inauthentic and be like, go buy this from Amazon. So that was one tangible kind of sticky thing that was very different. And just the ins and outs. I know one side of publishing as a bookseller. In some ways that was really helpful. It was helpful when designing the cover. Obviously I did not design the cover. An incredible artist designed the cover. But we went back and forth a lot. And I felt pretty confident in the expertise I had to offer there, because I'm hand selling books and seeing them on shelves and ordering them from online catalogs all day, every day. So that's an example of, I had this expertise that I could kind of bring to the table. I also knew as a bookseller how many copies, I didn't know the number, but like, I knew it would be a big, long shot to be a New York Times bestseller. Like, I was very, like, I think my sweet parents maybe thought, well, you could be a New York Times bestseller. And I was like, no, I cannot. Like, you really need that celebrity book club pick. You need that sticker. You need the New York Times interview. You need something to be a New York Times bestseller. And so I am grateful that my book selling experience also made me aware of the realities of publishing. I think a lot of authors probably go in with pie in the sky, rose-colored glasses about sales. I don't know, critical reviews, or I think I went in with a pretty realistic perspective, and I am very grateful for that, because it made it easier to swallow some of those realities.
Well, and especially thinking about your essay about New York City, that was probably a nice grounding.
Yes.
Like, what an asset, a mental asset. To be like, okay, I actually know how this works. It's really easy to romanticize publishing, because it's romanticized everywhere.
It's romanticized for us, right? I mean,
yes.
Younger, Sex in the City, like everything has romanticized it for us. But when you're a bookseller and an independent bookstore owner, you actually know what that work looks like, and you know a little bit, at least a little bit, how the sausage is made. And so I'm glad, because probably 18-year-old Annie would have been bummed, like sad. But almost 40-year-old Annie went in really knowing, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But which is why my goal for the book was always, I just wanted it to find the right readers, and I believed there was an audience for it, or I wouldn't have written it. I really did believe there was an audience that would need or want a book like this one. But I was not so naive as to think, oh, it'll be a Reese Witherspoon pick or a New York Times bestseller. I did not think those things.
And yeah, so I feel like I talk a lot with my writers about just your mindset as a writer, and just knowing that, okay, there's a reader out here for this. That's weirdly a major hurdle for a lot of readers, is to be, like, someone wants to read this. I'm like, actually, I promise you that they do.
Yeah.
I promise
yes, you have a story to share. Yeah.
So I'd love to get into the actual book and the writing. I am a sucker for essay collections. They're my favorite form of creative nonfiction. They're my favorite to write. I have my own collection in progress. And am obsessed with essays. And so what made you decide to write essays as opposed to a prose memoir?
So I think so I am a huge essay collection reader as well. Some of my favorite books, like I specifically am thinking of C.J. Hauser's The Crane Wife collection. Like some of those have just been my favorite books in recent memory. So I'm a fan of the genre, first of all. And then I also think I am just naturally better at writing in the essay format. And I think that comes from a journalism feature writing kind of background where I am there's a reason I have not yet tried my hand at fiction. I'm not saying never because I do have some ideas, but like fiction would be harder for me because there's something about building that narrative, telling that story in long form that I would find challenging because of my journalism background, because of the work that I did in my early and mid 20s, even because of something like blogging. Like I knew how to craft a short personal essay. And so it was a no-brainer to me when I was thinking about writing a book. I knew it was going to be essays. I think part of that too is I'm going to turn 40 next year. To me, long form memoir or prose memoir feels more, and this is probably just me as a reader, but like that feels like something you write when you've lived a whole life.
Sure.
Or I'm thinking specifically of Jen Hatmaker's new memoir, Awake, that came out this month. Like when you have a specific instance that you want to write about or a specific situation. Elizabeth Gilbert just wrote All the Way to the River. Like if you have a specific instance or a particular story you want to tell, or if you've lived a long life and you're reflecting back on that life, that's kind of how I picture prose and long form memoir. I didn't think the book I wanted to write, I did not have a specific instance. I mean, I could have maybe written about life as a bookseller or something like that. But I think even that would naturally have lent itself to shorter essays. And then what I hoped was that I could weave the essays and kind of weave them together so that they told a full story, but they didn't tell my full story. I still people are shocked by this. I am a relatively private person. And so writing in essay format allowed me to be vulnerable in the ways I was ready to be vulnerable because I felt like, oh, I'm going to tell this snippet. I'm going to show you this picture. So yeah, I love the form. I think my gifting and skill set naturally leans that way. And again, it's partly that journalism background. I loved the writing of, he's a Southern writer, Rick Bragg. He writes for magazines, and I fell in love with his feature writing when I was in college. And so I think those are some of the teachers I learned from as a reader. And so when it came time to sit down and write my own book proposal, I mean, I didn't really even think about anything else. I knew I wanted to write essays.
I love that. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of prose memoirists, and the skill set of writing an essay is concision and being able to know exactly what you want to say and being able to say it in a short amount of space, like in a short word count. And that is a real challenge for a lot of writers. It comes very naturally to me as well. It's much easier. I don't know if that was like the aughts blogging era.
I was about to say millennial culture trained us to do this. Like our attention spans trained us to do this.
Yes. But I also love and this is just, I love this about so many essay collections. Any good essay collection to me causes me to reflect back on my own experience and to notice those small things, you know, and any good essay focuses on something pretty micro and it kind of pulls it into a bigger context of meaning. And I love reading an essay collection and sitting with an essay and then noticing my own life differently.
Yes, exactly. That's what I love as a reader too. I mean, you go back to the C.J. Hauser example, like one of my favorite essays in that collection is about the Philadelphia Story, which is an old movie, and it made me rethink that whole movie. It made me think about what could I write where I could reflect on this like piece of pop culture, tie it back into my life. I mean, I think she's a genius of the form, but that is when I read Shauna Niequist is another example for me. I grew up reading her in my early 20s, and she is the type of writer where she made me realize, what might look like a boring normal quiet life to somebody else actually is full of really interesting characters, interesting storytelling. She's who opened my eyes to that. And so you're exactly right. Like the best essay collections, I think, lend to your own self-reflection.
Yes. And I feel like in Ordinary Time and in the first episode of this series, the series is called Why It Works or Not. I would never invite you onto the podcast if I had like criticism about what didn't work. So I just want
that
to
did slightly make me nervous.
clear.
I was like, oh boy.
I would never invite someone on where there were significant criticisms at all. Like, so just so that's clear. In the first episode, it just came out this past Tuesday, I talk about kind of the ideal reader that I perceive for your story. And I talk about like a mirror reader and a window reader. And I could see myself in both of those. Like, I don't live in my hometown. I grew up in Denver, Colorado.
Okay.
And I haven't been there probably in 5 years. My parents don't live there anymore. So I don't have that, but I have lived in the same zip code for the past 15.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of people come and go. And so it was fun to be able to engage with experience that is similar but not identical. And I'm a major homebody, probably again why I've stayed in the same zip code, because I don't like also moving. If pregnancy test and marriage, moving's worse.
Yeah.
But I don't, and I love where I live, and so I could really relate to that concept. But I also love how you structured the essays in the sections that kind of have their own arc throughout. The way that again, something else I love about editing essay collections is being able to edit the individual essays and figure out what each essay is saying, and then putting them together.
Yes, it's like a puzzle.
Like a puzzle, and it kind of like lands the plane by the end, so that you feel like complete when you finish it.
Yes. I'm so grateful to hear you say Ordinary Time as both a mirror and a window, because, and I've told this anecdote before, and I wish I could name her. She's a podcast listener, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But when I was first promoting the book, or I think soliciting pre-orders, a podcast listener reached out and said, I think I want to read your book, but I am a military wife and I've never stayed. And I have really been forced to not get to stay. And she said, I'm worried. She said something like, I'm worried that your book won't resonate with me, or I won't, it's not written for me. And which is totally valid. And I teased, I was like, well, you don't have to read it. Like, you don't have to read it if you don't want to. But what I sincerely hoped was the book would be, if a stayer read it, they would feel instant camaraderie and would feel like a sigh of relief. Like, oh, good, me too. Like I wanted a reader. I think specifically, I actually think of one of our booksellers at the bookshelf. She's our inventory coordinator. Her name's Kendall. She's an FSU grad. FSU is just about 45 minutes away from Thomasville. And she has chosen for now to stay. So she graduated from college and is staying and working at the bookshelf. Most of her friends have moved on to like their next thing. And I really did think about somebody like Kendall, who I wanted her to know, hey, there is true beauty and growth that comes from staying. And I wanted her to get to read the book, or somebody like her to read the book and feel like their story mattered, and their decisions to stay meant something, and rootedness means something. And then I also really hoped that this book would extend beyond the South. So the fact that you're in the Pacific Northwest is really cool to me, because certainly the book probably does, I assume, feel a little bit Southern, because I live in a Southern small town. But I wanted it to feel broader than that. Like I didn't want to write just a book for Southern Living magazine readers. I wanted to write a book where my friends who all moved away, none of whom live in the South anymore, could still read it and see something in it or be inspired by something. It's why I specifically wrote about my own times of leaving, because I wanted to point out that even if you stay put, you will still leave something. You will leave an institution, you will leave a faith, you will leave a job, like you will leave something. And so I wanted to write about that so that folks who don't live the kind of life I live, who maybe don't live in their hometowns or don't live in the deep South or aren't religious. I still wanted them. I didn't want to write a religious book. I didn't want to write a small town book. I wanted to write a book that I hoped lots of different kinds of readers could pick up and read. And then also, if you happen to live the kind of life I live, you might read it and feel comforted.
I love that. And what I love about essay collections also is that you're able to come at a concept from so many different angles. The concept of staying put, it starts out with staying put in a physical location, about saying goodbye to your friends as they all leave. You're like, wait a second, that wasn't the plan.
We
And
were going to stay together.
no, wait, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But then my favorite sections were the ones about religion and the ones about the last one about just staying put with you. And
Yes.
like those are, I think, especially for millennials, two major themes and experiences
Yeah.
with faith and spirituality and religion. And then just figuring out who you are when every year is an unprecedented time.
Yes.
And
Yes. Like,
since
how do you,
since like middle
yeah.
school.
Yes. How do you stay steady when the world is on fire? Like, how do you stay, and I wanted to write about those things because sometimes I have regrets that I haven't changed, that I never dyed my hair or I never got a tattoo and there's still time. Like who knows what the
You're
last,
not even
who knows
40
what
yet.
that's right. Who knows what the next decade will hold. But I think I wanted to write about that because I think I wanted to write and release myself from the isolation I felt of like, oh, well, I never did this. And so am I never going to do it? And what happens if I never do it? Will it be okay? Like, will I still live an interesting life if I never do X, Y, or Z? And will I still live an interesting life if I have the same haircut I've had since I was 8? Like, does my story still matter if I live in the same town? And I wanted to write about those things because a lot of things change. I mean, our relationships change, our religion or our faith changes. And so what doesn't? So you're exactly right. Like when I was pitching this book, I think what finally caught the agent's attention and what made him take me on is that he liked the idea of staying because post-pandemic, a lot of people were moving back to their hometowns, or I was even seeing in the news, like just stories about, and I was seeing it in my own family, friends and family, like people were leaving to be closer to in-laws, or like they were going back maybe to where they had come from. And so I think both my agent and I felt like it was pretty timely subject matter. But then when I started sketching out the rest of the proposal, I think I realized, yes, staying can mean geographically, but it also can mean, oh, I'm still the same girl who loved and thought she was going to play for the WNBA. I'm still the same person who has loved books her whole life. And I also wanted to write a book that would appeal to people my own age, millennials, right? Like I felt like there were enough pop culture references that would be fun for a millennial. But I also have been so overjoyed. So many older people have, like people my parents' age, have read the book and really liked it or reached out to me that they loved it. And that also filled me with a lot of joy because I thought, yeah, the idea of staying you is prescient or valid whether you're 39 or 69. Like the idea about, surprising yourself and maybe realizing, oh, I do like a house with a pool, or I do like a puppy. That could be true, in your 20s and in your 70s. And so, yeah, I wanted the theme of staying to move beyond just geography.
Well, it was well executed. And
Thank
again, like
you.
there were certain essays that really like made me think about my own experience. And, oh yeah, like I have felt that way too about
Mm-hmm.
this institution or about this place or about
Mm-hmm.
friends. I think that's a superpower of an essay collection is to be able to bring in all the facets of a concept.
Mm.
Even for someone who doesn't resonate or like doesn't identify
Mm-hmm.
experientially with every one of the facets.
Yeah, the faith chapters were the chapters I was most worried about because I did not want to alienate any reader, but especially if a reader stumbled upon my essay collection, because I did not want this book, and booksellers can shelve it wherever they want, but I personally did not want this book to just be sold in like a Christian nonfiction shelf. That was not that would have been, it's totally okay, but for me, I would have been disappointed. I wanted, because I hoped that the essay spoke beyond that. I also, though, did not want to shy away from what is a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. So just like talking a ton about the book being on Amazon felt disingenuous, it would have felt equally inauthentic to write an essay collection all about staying and about my life in my town without addressing that I am a person of faith, and that faith has ebbed and flowed and had its ups and downs. I also felt like I was reading a lot of books about what is known in Christian culture, Christian circles as deconstruction. I felt like throw a rock and you'll hit a deconstruction book, and that is fine. But I was getting to the point as a reader where I was like, but what are we supposed to do though? like I'm, thank you. I felt serious solidarity and a deep gratitude that yes, let's write about deconstruction and like burning some things down, and what happens when this doesn't fit anymore. But also, what are we supposed to do next? Or what do you do if you still really believe in this faith, but you don't know where to go with it? And so I wanted to write about those things, but I also really didn't want to alienate a reader for whom those things would not be familiar. And so, it's my hope that you might read it, and if you're not particularly religious, it might just be insight into a culture that's different from yours. And then if you are, even my personal faith experience is so niche. The Church of Christ is very rooted in the South. It is very small. And so I was nervous about that. I talked to the editor a lot about that. I was like, should I name my denomination or the denomination of my childhood? Like, it feels really specific. And she was adamant. The editor was like, yes, you should name it, because I was a little concerned that a reader wouldn't know what I was talking about or wouldn't feel a familiarity. But I think that's also doing a disservice to the reader. Readers can figure it out. Readers can figure it out. And I hope that those chapters, I think what I've heard from folks is that those chapters were some of their favorites.
Yes, they were some of my favorites. And side note, my term, and like this is actually what I'm exploring in my own essays right now, but I call it spiritual renovation.
I prefer that. Yes.
I never really resonated with deconstruction as as a term, and I've engaged with a lot of that content. I'm Mormon, and so like that's a whole
yes,
the whole thing.
Yes.
And, but there's so even someone who doesn't identify with the Church of Christ, there's in my own conversations with people of all different faiths, we're all kind of asking the same questions.
Yes, exactly. Because I think we're asking it. Well, a lot of people I know are asking it of our political institutions, or so like even if the faith aspect maybe doesn't apply, there are other ways in which we're trying to figure out, where do we fit now? Like, now that we think this, or now that we've reached this conclusion, where do we go? And what space do we create for ourselves? And I think that extends far beyond the religious.
Yes, I 100% agree. What was your experience working with an editor? Kind of talking about you're on the other side of publishing, where you're usually on the selling side, and we've talked about kind of the actual publishing experience, like launching the book into the world. What was like working with an editor?
So I was really looking forward to working with an editor. I don't know what this says about me as a person. I feel like, is it Angela, somebody from The Office, like the TV show The Office, is like, I really work well under scrutiny. Like, that's what that sounds like. Like, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to be edited. But truthfully, I don't have an MFA. I didn't graduate with my degree in creative writing. And probably, if we were to dig deep, there's probably maybe some insecurities there about, I'm not qualified. I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to Iowa or whatever. So I kind of hoped working alongside an editor would make me feel legitimate and would feel like, oh, like this is real. Like I worked with an editor. This is a real book. And I think some of that was true. So for me, the editor at Harper One, who believed in my book and bought my book, moved to a different publisher a month later.
Oh.
And so I knew I had writer friends who had kind of let me know that the publishing, maybe transient is a good word, but like people move, it's in flux. People are constantly going from publisher to publisher. So I knew that that was a possibility, but I was really disappointed. And so I was assigned a new editor. Her name's Angela, and I loved working with Angela. Angela came at my book from what I would call more of a marketing standpoint. Like that was her former background. And you could totally tell. She came to our first meeting talking about like SEO and how to structure certain chapters to resonate with readers. And I was really grateful for that. But I did immediately have to switch my mindset of like, oh, I think as a bookseller, and I know I have done this on the podcast, I know that I have critiqued a book and said, this book needed an editor. When perhaps what I should be saying is this book needed more writing. This book needed a better writer. Because what I am discovering is an editor's job is only so much. Mm-hmm. Maybe especially in the genre of memoir, where it is your very personal stories. Angela was a huge help, but she did not write my book. She came on board. I submitted the first draft in March of 2024. And we met over Zoom, and she, I'll talk about the chapter. There's a chapter in the first section of the book where I talk about staying friends. And I mentioned this pineapple ornament that my husband gifted me. And it was like a symbol of hospitality. And it was Angela's idea to end the chapter. She felt like the chapter would be stronger if I ended with that same imagery. So that's an example of what an editor can do, is they can see things that maybe you don't see. Mm-hmm. And hopefully make things better. That's what I wanted. And I do believe that is what Angela did. But what Angela didn't do is come in and totally restructure my book or I think I was envisioning like a writing workshop where like the editor comes in and scratches out all these pages and tells you to rearrange. For me, that was not the case. Now, I don't know if that's typical or atypical. I couldn't tell you that. But it was a lesson in, as a reader, when I think, this book needed an editor, maybe it just needed a little more finessing on the part of the writer. Like I'm realizing the writer is who most of these works belong to. And then the editor zhuzhes them, makes them better. In Angela's case, because of her marketing background, she thinks about it from a marketing perspective. She helped me punch up a couple of my pop culture references. And then the copy editing, that was also fascinating to me because my background is copy editing. So boy, was I determined. And I do think I turned in a very clean manuscript. Because I really took that very seriously. But I do remember, and this is kind of one of my favorite little anecdotes, but the copy editor did come in and say, I think I used the phrase in the book, I had an almost panic attack. Mm-hmm. And she like marked it and she said, what is an almost a panic attack? These don't exist. Just change it. Like change it to panic attack or reword. And I respectfully was like, I do think you can almost have a panic attack.
You can. I can attest that I was like, I read that phrase, like, I know what that means. I've experienced that.
So I didn't push back often, but that was one phrase that I did. I was like, beg to differ. I have lived through an almost panic attack. And so I think that's a fun anecdote to say. That's what an editor is doing. That's what a copy editor is doing, is they're helping tweak your language. They're not there to write your book for you. Yeah. And so I think, not that I went in thinking that, but I do think I thought I was going to go in and get like an MFA professor, or an English professor coming in and helping me brainstorm. Maybe if I had needed that, meaning if I had come and said, and I did at one point ask her about a chapter. I was like, should I take this chapter out? Should I leave it? So she did help when I came with like a question like that. But the editor's job, I think, is to take your writing and elevate it. And so I loved working with an editor. Again, I think it's my journalism degree. Like I loved that, but it was not some kind of writer's workshop experience. That's not what it was at all.
As an editor, like my biggest guiding principle is to first understand and get on board with what the writer's trying to say, so that I know, okay, like what are we actually what do you want to say? Mm-hmm. And then to help them amplify that through their voice. Mm-hmm. And there's a line in my work, I do a bit of kind of writing coaching, which is maybe
Mm-hmm.
what you were experiencing or expecting a little
Yes.
bit more. And
Yes.
so some people, I think a lot of writers think that maybe they are ready for an editor or are looking for an editor when they actually want like a writing coach.
Yes. I think so.
And
Yes.
and so yeah, like those are just different experiences as a writer that you can opt into,
Yes.
especially for independent writers. And the whenever I do a line edit
Mm-hmm.
on a piece, that is much more like I can only work with what's there.
Right. Yes. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I realized. And honestly, doesn't this make sense when I think about from the book selling side, how many books are published every year? That means one editor is working on, I mean, at least, I would think at least 1 to 3 dozen books at a time. Like, I know how many books are coming out every year. Like, so they're working on multiple manuscripts at once. So it totally makes sense to me now. And I love this distinction. And I wish I'd known about it because I do think there's a difference between a writing coach and a writing editor or an editor. And I think what's being offered from a publisher, especially if you've already made it, if you've already made it to a major publisher that has already bought your book and is buying your book, that editing is not going to be. I think they would be disappointed if they were having to rework your
Yes.
work because by that point they're already bought in. They expect you to be the writer and they will help elevate it. Whereas if you are independently publishing or you're working on your work for the first time, I think a coach would be super valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've a lot of writers that I've worked with, I'm not the first editor that they find
Mhm.
because they're actually looking for an editor coach hybrid, someone to like look
Mm.
like get into their work with them, but also kind of handhold a little bit more.
Yes.
And a traditional publisher is
Right.
they're not set up to do that.
No, they're not going to do that.
No. And
Yeah.
I think something that you and I both understand that maybe a new writer is because publishing is so glamorized
Mhm.
for us through
Yes.
like You've Got Mail, every
Yes.
like book
Every
lovers, Emily Henry,
rom-com
like
ever.
everything.
Yeah.
Publishing's an industry and it's there for profit. And
Yes.
so if you're submitting a query letter for a memoir or a book proposal and it's not no one's biting,
Mhm.
it's it's probably just because you haven't figured out what you're actually trying to say and being able to
Yes.
present that in a punchy, grabbing
Yes.
way.
Yes. I do tell the story. I know I've probably shared it. Maybe I even shared it on From the Front Porch. But when I had the opportunity to meet with my agent, Jonathan, for the first time, we had never met before. He was really doing a family friend a favor by by meeting with me. And I knew it was like my one shot. Like I knew it. I was like, this is it. This is my chance. And I was telling him about what I wanted to write. And he did not appear super interested until I think I said, well, really, what it boils down to is I want to write about staying. And then he immediately expressed interest and he was like, yes. And then he became super engaged. He was like, this is what you need to do, which was so great. And he was like, if you make these tweaks and if you orchestrate and organize these essays around this theme, I'll represent you and I'll take your book to auction and we'll go from there. And so it was so helpful to have somebody look at my proposal and be like, yeah, this is good. Oh, but what you really should like make he was able to see the hook that I couldn't see.
Yes, and the what you did and what he was doing is also thinking about the reader. Because I think when
Yes.
we're writing about our own lives, it's really easy to get self-indulgent and be like, well, this
Yes.
matters to me, so it's going to matter to everybody. When
Right.
that's not exactly true. And so
Yes.
you have to figure out what about this experience is relevant to a reader.
Yes. That's exactly right.
And
I
part,
there was an essay in the original proposal, but it was just going to be about a friendship I had and I once I started writing it, I really did realize, oh, I don't know who this is for. Like this is just about me and this friend and I- and there may come a day when that essay sees the light of day, but it will have to be with me kind of restructuring it and figuring out why does this matter to somebody who's not me.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's something that especially new writers, that's a
Hmm.
mindset to practice. Like you have
Yeah.
like the writer headspace where you do need to turn inward and get words onto the page. But then, more of an author headspace is thinking about, okay, well, who's going to be reading this?
Yes.
And why should they care about it?
Yes.
And then, furthermore, like an editor mindset is getting really objective with your own work.
Yes.
Which is difficult.
Hard to do.
It is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think working, however you publish, wherever you are, working with a professional to see those blind spots.
Yes.
And to kind of guide you through them is invaluable.
It's sometimes just helpful to have another I mean, it was so helpful. Jonathan's lack of interest made me eventually talk around it enough until I figured out sometimes it just takes talking to another person, and it doesn't even have to be an agent. It could just be a fairly neutral party in your life, and you can see their eyes glazing and you're like, oh, that's not interesting. And then you can totally tell when a person has bought in. And so I could immediately see, oh, that now Jonathan is interested. Now he is invested. And so that was such, oh my gosh, it was life-changing advice is what it was.
I love that you had that experience. And when I talk with writers and I'll ask them questions, what did you mean by this? And they'll just kind of talk. And I'm like, oh, so that's it.
Yes.
Like, that's what you want to say. Like if you can, sometimes you just need to talk stuff out. Like writing's a really solitary activity, but to amplify what you want to say, you need to actually be in conversation with someone.
Totally. Yeah. Because you're ultimately going to be in conversation with the reader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I want to respect your time, so we can close out.
Okay.
But with one final question, what would you tell a new writer, a debut author, about the editing publishing process? If there's like one thing that you could let them know, what would it be?
Be confident but humble. So be confident in the story that you're trying to tell. Be confident in what got you to this point, whether you're meeting with a publisher or you're working through the independent publishing process. Be confident in what you have to offer, but be open and willing to listen to another voice. I'm so glad that Jonathan looked at me and was like, that's what you need to do. And I'm glad I wasn't stubborn and thinking, well, no, I really want to write this. Like I'm glad that I was willing to trust the expert, because I think there are some things that I am the expert on. Writing and publishing a book, I was not. I didn't have any experience at doing that. And so I think a writer should be confident in the story that they have to share, or the story that they have ready to put into the world, but the humility to say, I'm not an expert at the actual putting it into the world, or I'm not the expert at this. I need help with this. And I think it'll be a way more enjoyable process if you can approach it with a spirit of humility and curiosity instead of tight-fistedness. So be confident in your storytelling and in what you have to share, but be humble and willing to accept the help of the expert. That would be, I think, my advice.
I love that. Thank you again so much for taking time out of your life and your day to talk with me. I love these conversations. I love talking to writers about their process, and I love the work I do, and it's really great to be able to talk to people who are publishing and having those conversations. So thank you so much. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Charlotte. This was delightful. I love talking about it with you, and I love the work you're doing to get writers' work into the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks so much. You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejanewrites. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.